We know that we are going to be in place for a number of more weeks, perhaps more months, but everything depends on how Canadians behave.
People have said, a lot of people have thought about it. Write it out. Don't do anything. Just write it out and think of it as the flu.
At the beginning of the March break, I went to Toronto Pearson Airport to go to Edmonton to visit my dad. Things were still pretty normal then, but right before the break, the Ontario government said that school would close for 2 weeks. I was worried because I had no idea what would happen. The airport was so empty that it felt like the apocalypse, but the flight was normal except for a few people wearing masks. That weekend, almost everything was still open in Edmonton, and I went to the West Edmonton Mall amusement park. Many rides were closed at that time, as they constantly were cleaning them. I saw a little boy who was sad because he was having his birthday party at the park that day, and only one kid showed up. After this day, more and more things started to close. I couldn't go to the water park or any museums. I saw my last movie at a theater where the seating was socially distanced, but only 5 people showed up anyways. The next day, all theaters were closed indefinitely. I went swimming one day, but 2 days later, the pool at the hotel was closed. This trip was the last somewhat normal thing I did. It was all surreal, as I was losing more freedom every day. At this time, most international flights were canceled, and we were worried that the government was going to end domestic flights too. We were allowed to fly, but the airport was like a ghost town, and almost no one was on the plane. All the restaurants were closed at the airport, and they no longer served food or drinks on the plane, just water. Most of the flight attendants had heavy-duty masks on. When we landed at Pearson, we took a taxi home. As we drove past the CN Tower, I knew it would probably be the last time I would see the downtown area for a long time. Happy that I could be in complete isolation. That's a dream for the way I cope. One day in, I spent it with friends, but that was it. Didn't stray far from the house. Over the next few days/weeks, my mental health progressively got worse. More depressive episodes and such, which was a shock since I thought I was doing so well. My therapist and plenty of other therapists and mental health workers have canceled face-to-face meetings, which is fair but also a hard blow. It was hard for me because I have a lack of privacy in my household. My therapist suggested virtual counseling, and being in such a vulnerable state around my family, like I am in therapy, is such a nightmare for me. My forms of coping involve some sort of distraction or entertainment. When it gets repetitive, it no longer has the same effect, which means mental health wellness decreases. I, of course, have my medications, but I can't help but worry about those who cannot get refills. Some doctors may ask for meetings before getting prescription renewals, which now we can't do because of the lockdown. I can't go see friends who are really good support and make me so happy. I can't go to my favorite art shops, restaurants, etc., which only adds on more and more sadness. It almost feels like a cage now, staying at home. I'm not saying I miss schooling, but I definitely miss how things were before the pandemic. And I think there will be long-lasting effects, even after it clears. Things may change, and that's scary. So all I can do now is wallow in sad and numbness, which is never fun when you deal with mental health. What my week normally looks like is that I go to school for 5 days. I come home and I see my friends or play basketball. My March break started pretty good, but things got worse and worse and worse. Me and my mom went to Ottawa for a bit, and the day we got there, the War Museum had closed, and I was encouraged not to sit next to anyone on the transit. This was when the virus was starting to get really bad. Restaurants and stores were still open when we were there, but 2 days after we got back, everything was closed except grocery stores and hospitals. I could not ride the TTC anymore, as they started asking why people were riding it, and if you weren't going to work, they would kick you off. The government then said you could not visit people anymore. I still played basketball on my own until the parks started shutting down. All I can do now is chill in my house or walk my dog. I am pretty lucky when it comes to the virus. We live in the suburbs, so we have a reasonably big house with a large lot, so the 4 of us here have a lot more breathing room than most. At this point, I'm missing some of my friends, and the timing is specifically inconvenient due to me just starting a relationship with a girl as the country got locked down. Now I'm just hoping/praying that the lockdown can end rather than an extension being forced by the circumstances. We went to the store in Toronto to get toilet paper, and there was none. We went to 5 other ones. We checked several online shopping sites, and they were all so expensive. We decided to drive to Hamilton for a day in nature, and while we were there, we went to a store just to check to see if they had any. They had a full abundance. Who would know that Hamilton would have a lot of toilet paper? In self-isolation, I've been decluttering and reorganizing my room and going on lots of walks. The only time I go into a public area is when I pick up groceries with my mom. The staff usually seems stressed and very busy. I'm concerned how this situation is impacting people. I've worked in climate activism and justice for about a year now. Being an extrovert and constantly speaking to new people, reaching out to politicians, and communicating with various organizations. It's been a weird situation having my normal life come to a halt. I'm involved in Fridays for Future Toronto, and we were supposed to have a global climate strike on April 3rd. Due to the pandemic, we had to move it online. My entire activism exists on the internet now. Majority of my day is spent on Zoom and Slack. It's been difficult. I've gotten online hate. I've been trolled, sexualized, and discriminated against just for my sex and beliefs. It's been so empowering, though. We had an entire international movement via YouTube. I've connected with so many people through email. I've strengthened so many bonds and learned so much about myself. I'm so grateful for the climate justice community. Being inside for so long has really affected my mental health. I'm stressed out with nothing to distract me, and the misinformation floating around everywhere has only made me more anxious. The buses and subways are practically empty, and everyone's wearing masks, and it's super strange to see. Everyone around me is on edge.